Whoever is listening, however you are listening, I want to welcome you back. My name is Grayson Mann, and this is the Man with the Plan podcast, episode 24. Guys, thank you so much for the support, as always, for the show. You really killed it on this Lynn Vietri Superfan episode. And we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Help us out. And subscribe or leave a 5-star review if you like what you've listened to. Today, and if you've been following the podcast for the last month or so, a big tournament has just occurred, March Madness. So I decided to put a little tournament together for the people that listen to the show and support it. And we have the winner of the contest here today. His name is Andrew Street. Andrew Street hails from Amelia Island, Florida. He is the proud alumni of Valdosta State, and he resides from the same high school as my own mother, Berkmar High School. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Grayson, thank you. Thank you for having me on here. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So I really want to start, I got your text of list because basically what I wanted to do was the winner got to basically pick his own terms for the show, his own segment, and you had a multitude of things you wanted to talk about, which I was just fascinated about. Usually it's talk about one thing. You weren't shy at all, and I love to hear that. So I just want to start a little bit of golf. Let's talk about the Masters for a little bit. Give me your takeaways because, honestly, I'm not that educated on the Masters this year, especially since Tiger's not in it, the tragedy that happened with him in the car accident. Take me through what you thought about the Masters this year. Was it any different than any other normal year?
Sure. So this year, was a lot different, I think, with COVID hitting and the tournament was last played in November. They moved it back for November last year. And, the course is different in November than it is, temporary, like it is in April. And I think the scores showed it. I think the tournament, the course played like it should have in the past. And it was very enjoyable to watch. Of course, we had the first winner of any major from Japan, Hideki Matsuyama, that won the tournament. And, it was a great showing. I know that that country is proud, and I'll tell you, it was fun to watch. And, then we had the runner-up, Will Zalatoris, who played his college golf at Wake Forest, finished second. And then, you had the George Spieth finally coming on. He had won the week prior in Texas. And, so it was good for golf. We had the leaderboard was jam-packed with good names. I wish Dustin Johnson would have showed. He failed to make the cut. So did Rory McIlroy. But all in all, the tournament was a very good tournament. Sunday afternoon late. I know the nerves get to these players, and you can see the score start dropping. Hideki at one time had a 5-stroke lead, and ended up holding on to win by 1 stroke over Will. So it was a fun tournament, great tournament. The weather was perfect except for the afternoon rain on Saturday, which I think helped the greens and slowed them down. If you had watched Thursday and Friday, those greens were real fast. So it was enjoyable to watch. Just for a standpoint, with the Ryder Cup coming up this year, Hideki moved up from the world rankings from 25th to 14th, and now he's, on the front page of that, especially for the President's Cup. And like I said, Will Zalatoris, who I believe this is his first year as being a professional, went from 46th to 27th, which was, I think, the biggest jump of the week for any of the pros. And like I said, Jordan Spieth, who is working his way back up, is now 29th in the world. So all in all, it was a great tournament. Yes, I would have loved to see Tiger there. Fortunately, with his accident, as I spoke to you earlier, I really think Tiger had a shot if he was healthy to win this tournament. Unfortunately, we'll never know. And but anyway, I think it was a great opening to the major season, and looking forward next to the U.S. Open.
It seemed like it kind of came out of nowhere because we had the Masters so close in November, and then watching the March Madness tournament, Jim Nantz occasionally would advertise it, and I was like, wait a second, we just had this happen. So it was kind of like a double event, sort of say. And speaking of Jim Nantz, basically the voice of sports, also is the voice of March Madness, and you were the winner of the tournament for it. So let's talk about your process. Why Baylor? Why was the Baylor your pick over overly favorited Gonzaga.
Sure. So there again, and once again, thank you for inviting me to be on this the tournament tournament challenge there, and your mother, who I went to high school with, Meryl. I want to give a shout out to her. Hey, Meryl. She sent me an invite to try it, and I said, okay, let me do it. I have another league that I do it in. So, the process is, it was a strange year. Once again, I think a lot of it's strange with COVID. Just with the trying to follow the college basketball, the games were kind of not shortened, but a lot of the top games that were originally scheduled, the games got, some of them got canceled, and Baylor and Gonzaga was supposed to meet earlier in the year, and unfortunately Baylor had the COVID issue, and I think Baylor dealt with that throughout the year. But just going through trying to catch all the games and the teams. The reason why Baylor, I just watching them the whole year. I just think their competition, they were more competition ready than Gonzaga. Their schedule was a little bit tougher. But by far away, I don't want to take anything away from Gonzaga. Gonzaga and Baylor were by far out through the whole year the number 1 and 2 team in the nation, and I don't think there was anybody that was even close after that. I know you mentioned Jim Nance. His alma mater, Houston, had a great run in it, and UCLA, had a great run, and I tell you, UCLA is going to they're going to be a tough out next year, and a lot of people will probably have them, in the top 5 next year starting out. And of course, Gonzaga should start out as number 1, but just going through the picks. There's always kind of a formula that you try to follow, and you always want a 12 beating a 5, and who would have known that we had some big upsets, that most of everybody, there wasn't a perfect bracket after the first day, especially after Oral Roberts pulling that upset.
Oh yeah, I feel like the biggest takeaway from this tournament was you really, at least how I wanted to pick it when I was trying to get my serious brackets, was especially this year, I feel like chalk was the best way to go, and I would pick the better team more than I usually would, and then it kind of just flipped over on its head because I think it's such a strange year, especially I compared it almost to the NBA bubble where everybody was in the same spot, everyone was in the same hotels, the same place, and once you got the COVID fear kind of shaken off, all right, everyone's here, the likelihood of that virus kind of gone away a little bit. It felt like everyone was on an even playing field, and it was especially true with teams like Oral Roberts, Loyola Chicago, and then UCLA, that teams just come out of nowhere, and it just made the tournament so much more entertaining than I anticipated it being, even without the fans.
Yeah, and I think, and I agree. I think without the fans being there, I hope it didn't take away the experience for these student athletes, because like I said, they earned it. These teams earned to be in there, and it was a shame that they didn't have crowds there. But there again, I think with no crowds there, I think it plays into the hands of where, say, you have a big team that's playing a smaller seed, and you have a large crowd there, and nerves kick in, and I just think with no being there, there's no really a home court advantage, and I think that helped out to some of the teams to bring them close together with the tournament that we had, and all the upsets that we had.
I really want to take this take that I've seen kind of float around, and maybe you think it's maybe a little overblown. Gonzaga needs to change conferences. What's your take on that? Maybe them shifting over to the Pac-12, getting more competition ready for games like Baylor, where in that game it seemed like Gonzaga was completely mentally and physically unprepared for a team that was just swarming them play after play, shot after shot. Sure, UCLA is good competition, but it felt like Baylor was just a different breed.
Yeah, and Gonzaga's been in the same conference, and Gonzaga has been around, I want to remember when I was in college when they first started coming about, so they've had staying power. And the way that I look at it, with the football mentality is when Boise State had that run, where they were, they weren't in a big conference, but, every once in a while they would knock off an Oklahoma. They knocked off Georgia one year. But, they didn't really have staying power. It was like 5, 6, 7 years. And then, they've been kind of off the map lately where Gonzaga just, it seems like every year they're growing and growing and growing. But, you look at the conference, it's, Santa Clara, Pepperdine, those are all great schools. But, yeah, I think you have to play above a little bit more, to get better, competitive ready. Now, it wasn't their fault. They had some games that were canceled, and Baylor being the big one. I mean, they scheduled Kansas, who kind of had an off year. West Virginia, Auburn, the first of the year. But like I said, I think just at the end, just with Baylor, it seemed like every night they were playing a top 20 team from their conference. And, Gonzaga, blazed through the tournament, per se, until they got to UCLA. And UCLA took them into overtime there. They're at the end with the shot by Suggs and sent them to the final. And like I said, I think that also kind of played in to the championship game where Gonzaga may not have their feet under them and ready to go. And boy, it showed there in the first half there, especially when Baylor got off to that great run and Gonzaga was just never able to catch their breath.
The comparison I wanted to make with Gonzaga was like Notre Dame football. The way they are now, it seems that Notre Dame, with being in the independents, they're not really aligned to any conference. And it was different this year because of COVID. And they were able to knock off Clemson one time. But then when they got their guys back, it seemed like Notre Dame was outmatched. And even more so when they played Alabama, who was the future national champion with Devonta Smith, Mac Jones, just the annihilation all over the board when Alabama was playing anybody. Notre Dame Gonzaga, does that seem like a fair comparison, or is it just because it's two different sports? Is it not really that fair to make?
Well, I think it is now because, like I said, Gonzaga's had that staying power now. I mean, they've been in the top 20 now in college basketball for like last 10 years, I would say, if not more. And with Notre Dame, Notre Dame had the low years of that nature, and Brian Kelly, since coming on has I don't know if you remember the 2012 national championship game against Alabama. Alabama just it was two different teams on the field, and I think Brian Kelly understood at that time he's got to get better players, faster players, and that's what he did. But with the comparison, I agree. Notre Dame, with the football, they're able to schedule who they want to schedule, and with Gonzaga, unfortunately, you have to kind of get in the conference because there's really no independence in basketball. That you have to have a tournament to play in to get in the tournament. And right now I just think Gonzaga, if there's a conference out there that they can move into, I think they would be looking. And I know they don't really have a football team or anything like that, so it may be kind of hard. Their hands may be kind of tied to where they would fit in somewhere, especially out in the West Coast.
Right. And I feel like with the argument is they're in the West Coast, they're dominating these teams. Once they get in the tournament, they kind of start to get once you start to get punched in the mouth and you've all year been flying around, basically being able to do whatever you want, it mentally gets at you. I think that game against UCLA, that I think many could argue that was the best game of the tournament.
Sure.
Where, let's say Suggs misses that shot, UCLA might have been able to pull out a win and probably one of the biggest upsets in college basketball history, but they probably would have turned around and gotten smacked in the face by Baylor too. So it just seems like Gonzaga, either way, was in a losing shot.
Yeah, I mean, they had that tough draw. They were playing by arguably the team that was the hottest was UCLA, and then they played to probably the second team that was hottest to Baylor, and that's just it was 48 hours apart, and that's just it's tough, and Baylor was ready, and Gonzaga was not.
So let's talk about teams that are on fire, but let's talk about the football teams that are on fire. Clemson and Georgia have arguably the biggest matchup going into 2021. Hopefully we can get Charlotte full of fans, full crowd. It would be an electric game to start off the 2021 season. Back to normalcy. What are your takeaways being the big Georgia fan that you are, and me being the Clemson student that I am? How do you think that Georgia takes on Clemson and takes home the W?
I'm glad you mentioned that. I grew up in the Athens area. My mother's from Athens. Actually went to school with Fran Tarkenton, high school with Fran Tarkenton, a Georgia legend, I'm really looking forward to it. I think the Kickoff Classic being in Charlotte is great. I've been to some of the games in Athens back in the '80s, back when we played every year per se, and it just the electricity, which I'm sure was the same in Death Valley when Georgia came to town back then, and back in the '80s, both teams were late '70s, '80s. Both teams were powerhouses, and once again, we see that now. Both teams, especially Clemson, with their national championships, it seems like them and Alabama every year now are fighting 1-2 about who's going. So I think it's great. I'm looking forward to it. The city of Charlotte is a great host. I believe it seats 74,000. I don't know if they're going to bring in extra seatings, but you split it down the middle. You got half the crowd Clemson, half the crowd Georgia. I think it's going to be very interesting. Both teams, have question marks coming in, and both teams though have some very good strengths. And I think the two that I want to hit on basically is one, Georgia's front seven against maybe Clemson's its weakest that I think is their offensive line compared to what I think Clemson's strength is their passing game, going against a Georgia team that's basically, they have no returning starters on their cornerbacks. They do have a free safety that is back, and then they were able to pick up the kid from West Virginia in the transfer portal, but we don't know if he's going to be able to play or not. So I think those two, comparisons about the strengths and the weakness of each, I think it's going to make it a very interesting ball game.
The thing that I'm most excited for and probably most thankful is that DJ looks like to be, a lot of people are touting him as the next number one pick after Trevor. I mean, the kid is absolutely fantastic. We went to the spring game, watched him play. He looked calm, cool, and collected like he always is. I'm thankful that he was able to get experience against Notre Dame, a team, while we just spent a couple minutes ago knocking them as kind of a team that doesn't really stand up to the competition of a Clemson, Alabama, or in the basketball case of Baylor. I'm glad DJ got that experience in such a big game because I would have been really concerned if his first start as a college quarterback would have been against Georgia. That's not really where you want to be, and it felt like kind of a Cole Stout situation in 2014 where you had a stud like Deshaun Watson on the sideline, and Cole Stout kind of came in and it was all right at first, but then that talent of Georgia just took over.
You're right. So, he's coming in, I want to say he started the Boston College game maybe too.
Right, he did.
DJ. Yeah, and so, I think it's a great experience. He had two big games. It was a close game with Boston College, if I remember correctly. It was a 6-point game, I believe, and DJ had great numbers that game, and it was his first game as a starter, and then he came out the next game against Notre Dame at Notre Dame, and it was a 2 overtime game, a game that kept going back and forth. DJ had over 400 yards passing. The running game wasn't really, Travis wasn't really running that game. His numbers were down a little bit that game, but just DJ going to a tough place to play at Notre Dame. I know the crowds weren't as big, but still, it's still tough. It's Notre Dame. It's the hollow grounds up there, and I think DJ did a great job. And with him coming to quarterback, I don't think yes, Clemson. Clemson is going to miss Trevor, but you know what? I think they're in good hands.
I also want to touch on the point that you made with Clemson's offensive line versus Georgia front seven. And with Travis Etienne, I think we're going to miss him more than we think because I think he was able to mask a lot of the problems that Clemson had establishing that front seven and kind of being that anchor. Because in his freshman and sophomore year, he was phenomenal. In junior year, there was just something missing. But occasionally, he'd pop out a 40-yard, 50-yard run, and you kind of forget about all the problems. And now you're kind of having to establish a running back room. Who's going to be your number one against an SEC defensive line in Georgia that usually produces NFL talent?
Yeah, so you lose Travis. Trevor was your second leading rusher last year, per se. But you got two guys coming back. I think Lynn J. Dixon and Ches are coming back. Those are great two starts. They've got some something underneath them, and I think DJ may give them that option as well too. And like I said, I just to me, that the running backs and the offensive line for Clemson as the year progresses, you're going to see them progress. And I think once after the Georgia game, after looking at the Clemson schedule, no matter who wins the Georgia Clemson game, I think both teams are kind of set up with their schedule that they should be able to to run the gauntlet there. You're at North Carolina State. You're at Syracuse, which in the past, Clemson's had some tough games up at Syracuse, but I don't think Syracuse is on par with those other Syracuse teams of the past. And you're at Louisville, which that they're improving, but everything else I think is there for you. And I just think whoever loses that game, the first game, I don't think either one of them are out of it.
Right. And they have such a big name, too.
Yeah. Georgia has a little different schedule, but their schedule sets up perfectly, Basically, Georgia comes down to almost I hate to say it, a three-game schedule, but, every game is important. Clemson, and then, they play at Auburn, but I think Auburn's going to be a little down this year, got a new head coach. But, it's always the one here, in Jacksonville, where I'm from, Georgia, Florida, which usually last several years decides the outcome of the SEC East. But just quickly, I just want to briefly, but, one team you need to watch out for, I think, is Missouri. I don't think they're ready, but, I think Missouri could trip, Florida or somebody up in the season somewhere. But like I said, I don't think any of this first game is going to dictate how Clemson and Georgia go for this year. Like I said, I'm very excited for it. It's just, a lot of unknowns. I think both offenses will both be, with Georgia with JT Daniels and, Clemson with DJ, both offenses should be top 20 nationally. And I'll tell you what, Clemson's defense, if they're not the best defense that's coming back, I don't know who would be.
That
maybe Alabama's got a great defense, but you got 10 of your returners coming back, so that's always a big help, especially when usually the first of the year your defense is usually ahead of your offense.
Right, especially with a new quarterback coming in, a new system, you got to get that chemistry down. But I think we're going to see a lot of fireworks. Would you like to make a standout player or a prediction, last-minute prediction, before we move on to our final topic?
I hate doing the early predictions just because you have so much that's still out there. Georgia's got their spring game this week, and Georgia, unfortunately, they lost their best, I would say their best offensive weapon in the spring probably for the year, in Pickens. And I'd like to see it, the spring game, and then see how the summer camps are going. You still have some freshmen that are coming in. Seems like now the freshmen that sign are usually in camp, for their first spring practice. And it's also kind of tough to tell because last year everybody missed spring practice. Right. So a lot of the teams like Georgia on offense last year who had a question mark at quarterback, we thought, and until Jamie Newman came in, but then unfortunately he left a week before the season start due to COVID. There was just a lot of unknown. You didn't get that practice in. So now you got that practice. You got that summer coming about when it's just the players, motivating themselves, and then you got the fall practice. The summer camps, and I tell you right now, I haven't seen a Vegas line per se, but if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I think it's going to be. Maybe a pick'em game. Like I said, I think both teams, they're just, they're top tens on pretty much everything in their, offense, defense, special teams, and like I said, it's going to come down to play, and I'm just excited. I'm ready for it now.
Oh yeah, I think we all are. It'll be very special to hear. I would assume Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler will be calling that game, and just to hear a roar of crowd, that energy is just going to be something we haven't heard in a long time. That's going to be something I am most excited for. So,
Chill bumps. Chill
oh
bumps.
yes, oh yes. Final topic. Usually I'm interviewing people, and I get this unique perspective with you, and I'm very excited to ask you about this. Take me through
Sure.
your high school football days. Like, what were the best moments, the worst moments? Because a lot of this stuff, a lot of my listeners are probably gonna be able to relate to those grueling summer practices, that one last gasser. It's just something that I've never been able to put on this podcast. So just take me through what it was like being a high school football player, especially so
Sure.
it's changed so much in the last 20, 30 years.
Oh yeah, so definitely back, in the day, back when we were, it wasn't 24/7. There were a certain amount of times off that you had, plus you had a lot of, there wasn't basically a specialization per se. Where to now where you have, the baseball specialization, the football, the 7-on-7s. Yeah, we had football camps and stuff like that, but nowhere near like you do today. It's just so specialized today, and it's a different time. And we used to still have to, back in the day when you played on a Friday night, you still had the reel tape where you actually had the projector tape, projecting the game, and there was no email to send them to the teams. The coaches had to pick somewhere and meet them halfway to exchange game film. For God's sake, so it was a special time. One that I miss. I still dream about, and I'm sure anyone that's played high school football looks back and always says, "What mighta, coulda."
Right. Coulda, shoulda, wouldas.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a big saying. My time playing football. I still talk to several of my teammates. We get together once a year, if not twice a year, and we get together, a group of us, for that, especially my graduating class of '88. And so we were able to still spend time with each other on that. Like I said, just the day to day, just the grind, something that you miss, and it prepares you for life. I believe it just prepares you to mentally and get focusedly challenged on life, and we had some good years, we had some not great years. My high school team, the first year we ever made the playoffs from our high school was in '85, and we had a good freshman year and a sophomore year. We had a decent team our junior year. We lost, I believe, 3 games by a point or less, and our senior year we were just we had won a couple of games, but we were a tough conference. I mean, we were playing teams like Newton County, who had Dale Carter and Jake Reed on the team, and it's tough to defend that. Clark Central High School, which was a powerhouse back then, and then and your mom can relate to. She knows in the Atlanta area, Brookwood and Parkview just started coming up, and since then they've both won a lot of state championships in that. But anyway, yeah. So it was a great experience. I'll tell you what, we had the greatest cheerleaders. Your mom was great. The whole cheerleading for Burtmar, they were great. I can't say enough about that. I was lucky enough to see a bunch of them several years ago, and there again at our reunion several years ago, and it seemed like nothing changed, which is always good. So it's you keep in touch. With your high school friends, you spend 4 years, sometimes more than that, with middle school. Then everybody goes away, and you meet your new friends in college. But eventually, it comes back around when you get older. You still keep in touch with those high school friends and teammates, no matter if it be in football, basketball, baseball, golf, or whatever you did in high school.
Right. And that's just really what it's all about. That just the friendships, the bonds that you create. It lasts more than just the years you play football, play in high school. It really is something you can look back on. I still talk to some of my teammates, and some even in middle school. It's something that is very special to me. So to end this off, I want to kind of get a laugh out of you. I want to take me through your best play as a high school football player and your worst play as a high school football player. I will start. There was we were playing my senior year, and I was playing safety, and we were playing against a team. We were getting smoked. It was crushed. It was just terrible, and we were playing against a team running like triple option. They're just trying to run out the clock, and they had this big dude And so you got to have to make a decision, like mentally, split second. Do I want to get run over by this dude and make the tackle, or am I just going to kind of like try for it? So I went for option one and just got completely obliterated. I have it on my phone. My friends will bring it up from time to time as something just to laugh at. And I think it's pretty funny too. Take me through your best experience and your worst experience on the football field.
Yeah, my best experience, I would say maybe my junior year. I wasn't a starter my junior year. I was a backup. One of our starters, Gary Lammons, who went to Louisville, unfortunately got hurt on the first play or second play against Clark Central, who at the time was the number one ranked team in the state of Georgia. Back then we were 4A, which was the highest that you could have, but we were playing Clark Central at Clark Central. And I remember him getting hit the first game. So, Andrew, get in there and play defensive tackle, play defensive lineman. And I want to say that was the best experience I had. We didn't win the game. It was a competitive game. We kept it, close and to a point. But to me, that was, my first big experience besides, being on the special teams and, playing it here and there. But, getting that experience. And then the next week we played Brookwood, who a team the year prior that we had lost to in the playoffs. They were coming in, one of the top-ranked teams in the state, and we knocked them off at home. And I just remember a screen play where their quarterback went back to throw a screen, and I did my job. I stayed at home, and I dropped an interception as a defensive lineman. So that's probably one of the times that I do regret that I had six in front of me, and I dropped the opportunity.
Oh, no.
And it seemed like the senior year was just a blur. Like I said, we didn't really have a great season. We had, we won some games, not more than we wish we could have, and just the camaraderie that I had with the other players, and like I said, it was just a special time, and I tell you what, if you're a senior out there in high school listening, or you've been there, it seems like it just goes by so fast.
Right.
Those Friday nights, and it's something that I'm sure everyone that's played the game been associated with it. Cheerleaders, band, parents. It's just once you leave it, you miss it, and until you can maybe have a son or a daughter or something that's part of the program where you can go back and kind of relive it.
And I had the unique opportunity this summer, and I hope that if he's listening, Coach Myers, I want to come back for the summer. I was able to coach some of the summer practices and just kind of learn the other side of that process and just seeing how the teams developed. Being an alumni, I'm really excited where this program's headed. Pinewood Prep football is on the rise. So I just want to thank you so much, Andrew, for coming on. It was such a pleasure to have you. Congratulations on being the winner of the Man with the Plan podcast bracket.
Grace, I appreciate it. Does that mean I get an automatic invite? Do I get like a green jacket or anything like that for the automatic invite next year? Or
for future tournaments, we could get you like a green jacket or like a hat.
Gotcha. Well, Grace, I appreciate it. And hey, look, I look forward to meeting you one day, and tell your mother I said hello, and I appreciate it. The pleasure was, thank you so much.
I'll make sure to get you a jacket when we meet in person, all right?
Hey, maybe be Charlotte. You never know.
You never know. All right, guys, that was the Man with a Plan podcast, episode 24. Guys, I hope you enjoyed. If you listened all the way, consider leaving a like, comment what you want to see next, and subscribe for more. Andrew, any final thoughts before we take off?
No, like I said, hope everybody's, keep safe out there, and like I said, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, guys, this is the Man with a Plan podcast, episode 24. Have a fantastic day, and as always, take care.